Rabbi Isai, welcome back to Yerushalmi Yerushalmi Pesachim. Repeg Shavi Halacha Gimel, which is Piv Heish Nun Hey Amud Base. Okay, right at the bottom. Sacha b'Shemesh Shel Truma. Right, if you anointed the Cohen Pesach, you put oil of Truma onto it. Im Chavas Kainim, if it's a Kainim group, Yachlov, then they can eat it. V'im Shav Yisrael, if it's Yisrael group who can't eat, then Im Chai, if it's still not raw, it's not roasted yet, Yedichenu, you can wash it off with water and then roast it and eat it, because it didn't get absorbed in the oil. In Sli, but if it's been roasted, then Yiklef Achitzon, you have to peel off the outer shell, as it were, the outer piece, and the rest of it you can eat. Sacha, if you anointed it b'shemesh Masechet, then lo yasen adomim. So if you use Masechet oil, don't start swapping that oil for money in Bnei Chabura with the group. So don't start asking money for the Dmei Shemen, because Vishayin Mochad Masechet B'Yerushalmi, you're not allowed to sell Masechet, which now the Cohen Pesach has on it. You can't sell that in Yerushalmi. Now, Le Omar, the Mishnah said that if the meat hasn't been cooked yet, you can rinse it off. Ela Sacha, they said sort of anointed, you smeared it on a bit. Haim Tibla, if you dip it in the oil, then the whole thing gets absorbed, whether even without it being cooked. The oil gets absorbed throughout the thickness of the meat. Chad Banash, there was a man, Bishul Tanagota B'Shemen Sreifa, he cooked a chicken in Shemen Sreifa, which is Shemen Truma, which is Tameh, which you can't eat. Azal Shalom Rabista, he asked Rabista, Amale, he said, Azal Shulke, the one that's cooked is gone, you've lost it. Now, Kiri Masnisa, now about the Masechet, we said, Kiri Masnisa, this is what you should say, Ein Poitin Masechet B'Yerushalmi. The Mishnah wants to tell you can't start claiming money from the group and to redeem your Masechet, because you cannot redeem Masechet once it is in Yerushalmi. You have to just eat it. Now, an individual who's Tameh can't bring Cohen Pesach. He brings Pesach Sheni. When most of the people are Tameh, then they all bring the Pesach in a state of Tumah. And the same with other Korbanos as well. Now, Chamisha Dvarim B'ayim B'Tumah, 5 types of Korbanos who have a fixed time can come in a state of impurity. They can't be eaten. Chaim, I'm offering a shtei alechem, 2 loaves of shvuos, lechem upon him, the 12 loaves. Zivchei shamei tzibur, korbanos of the community, v'seirei Rosh Chodashim, and Rosh Chodesh goats. Pesach sheba b'tumah, that one which comes in a state of tumah, nachal b'tumah, that can be eaten as well. Shaloi ba b'tchilas elachim, the whole purpose of bringing Cohen Pesach is to eat it. V'chol korbanos tzibur, einon b'ay b'tumah. Now wait a minute, all other korbanos community can't come in a state of tumah? What the Tana wants to tell you is, even though they can come in the states of Tumah, they can't be eaten in the states of Tumah. These 5, which are the only Korbanos Sibur which can be eaten. So the Mishnah says that they're not eaten in a state of Tumah. 1 second. So these Korbanos, so these Korbanos can come in a state of Tumah, but they can't be eaten in a state of Tumah. Yeah, the Mishnah tells you, they can't be eaten in the state of Tumah. Now, amongst the 5 things mentioned in the Mishnah, you have the 2 loaves of Shavuos and the Zivchei Shamei Tzibur, which are the sheep for Shlomim, which is also on Shavuos. Now, what is the main thing? Is it the 2 loaves of Shavuos or is it the korban? But one of them is the main one. There's an argument which is the main one. Is it a korban or is it loaves? But really, it's one entity with 2 halves to it. One is secondary to the other. So why are we mentioning 2 in the list when really they go together? So Ben Command Amar Lachemik, whether the 2 loaves of Shavuos are the main thing, Ben Command Amar Kavasimik, or the sheep are the main thing. There's really 4 in this list, not 5, because 2 go by the same thing. So he says Tanya Chashla, and the Tana was worried for both opinions. So therefore, that's why he mentioned 5. Now, what is the source that Korbanos which have a fixed time push away Tumah? Some say, Kul Ha'in Maiden, they learn them all min Pesach, from Cohen Pesach. Some say, Kol Echad Echad Lam, you learn from its own source. Ma Dava Kul Maiden on Pesach, you learn from Pesach. Ma Ma'adosh, remember Pesach says you bring it in its time. Doiches HaTumah, you push away Tumah Ach Ma'adosh. Remember Kolan, so Korbanos Suba, which are in the Korbanos, of all of them, it says with all of them, Ma'adan.
Pesach is Doiches HaTumah.
What do you mean? If everyone's Tameh, you still bring the Pesach. Yeah. Or the Rov, most of the community, yeah. And with all Korbanos Sibur, there's reference to Moed, Doiches HaTumah, it pushes away Tumah. The one who says no, they all learn from their own source. How does he know? Like that, which we learn from Hashem said all the festivals of Bnei Israel. Now they're already written, the whole parsha of this already mentioned all the festivals, and then it says at the end, Hashem said all the festivals. I understand Kom Pesach pushes away Shabbos, and Tamid every Shabbos pushes away Shabbos. You have Moed, wherever it happens, every Shabbos you bring the Tamid. How do you know other Korbanos are brought on Shabbos, and in a state of impurity? Talmud Lomid is why it says, these you shall do in your festivals. So that tells you, on each of them, that they push away Shabbos. Now, what about the Omer offering, second day Pesach, and the Oila that's brought with it? The 2 loaves of Shavuos, and what's brought with it? Lo Shamanu, how do we know they push away Shabbos or Tumah? They're not mentioned in Pinchas. They're not included in that Eila Tasul Hashem b'Moadechem. They're not mentioned in Pinchas. When it says at the end of the Pasha in Emor, the Omer and the 2 loaves, it says, Vaydaber Moshe Ma'ad Hashem b'Nei Yisrael. Kavan, the pasuk fixed it like all other kabbanas, and they included also the Omer Sh'alechem Chayva, that they are an obligation. Shekulam Yavol b'Tumah. They should all come, even if it's Shabbos, even in the states of Tumah, you have to bring them all. Now, Kavan Sibur, which has a fixed time, is brought b'Tumah, but it can't be eaten b'Tumah. So he says, Geshem Shem B'ay b'Tumah. Well, if you can bring it, why can't you eat it? Kach Yunechad b'Tumah. So he says, the pasuk says, V'Basa Asher Yiga B'Chol Tameh Lo Yachel. So kodshim, that any person's tameh, you mustn't eat it. Right? The pasuk sounds like always you can't eat kodshim, which is tameh. So any person that makes it tameh, you can't eat it. Ve'emah for Pesach. Okay, let's say Pesach also maybe can't be eaten. That's different. When everyone's tameh, you can eat the Kom Pesach. Shani is different. The whole purpose of it is for the sake of eating. Therefore, if it's not fitting for eating when you bring it, you cannot fulfill your duty. When the Torah allowed you to bring it, the kavanah is it can be eaten in that state, as opposed to other kavanah sibur, which the kapara don't depend on that they should be fit for eating. Okay. We spoke about the difference between Kom Pesach and other kavanah sibur, that they can be tumah. Now, what about Kom Pesach of an individual and other private kavanahs, where some of the korban is tameh? Let's see. Nitzma habasa. Imagine Kom Pesach is tameh, but hachelev kaim. But the chelev is still around tahar. That's still kosher. The fats are still tahar. Ein azorgas adam. You can't sprinkle the blood. The whole purpose is to eat it. You can't eat it because the meat is tameh. We're not talking about a situation where they're all tameh, right? We're not talking about a normal situation. It's possible. You can't sprinkle the blood. But nitzma hachelev, if the chelev is tameh, but the meat is still there, but you can sprinkle the blood. Of Mugdashin, other kabbalas, it's not that. The meat is tameh, but hachelev kayem, the chelev is still around, you can sprinkle the blood. So the other kabbalas don't come for you to eat. So it's kosher even if the meat is tameh. Yeah, the others, the whole purpose is not necessarily for you to eat. So that's why they have a different dip. But like nasan. Now, which opinion is this like? Where we said if the meat is tameh and the fat's around, you can't sprinkle the blood. That's not like Rav Nasan. Rav Nasan Amar, he said, Yosin Bizrika, you can fulfill your duty Kom Pesach by sprinkling the blood, even below achila, even without eating the meat. He says, yes, you should eat the meat, but it doesn't make a difference with the kashrus of the korban. He says, if the meat is tameh before you sprinkle the blood, go ahead and sprinkle the blood. Now that goes against our Mishnah, that if the meat is tameh, you can't sprinkle the blood. So our Mishnah is like the Chachamim who argue. They say eating Kom Pesach is essential. And if it's tameh, it's possible. So don't sprinkle the blood. Right? Even if it is sprinkled, doesn't help. And the person has to bring another korban. Ma'atab, what's the source of Rav Nasan? It says in the Torah, all the people will shecht it in the afternoon. Isa is an individual lashon. There's only one animal, everyone can fulfill a duty with it. Now, so if the whole people are fulfilling their duty with one sprinkling of blood, there's one animal. Do you think everyone's going to have a kazayis from it? Definitely not. So it must be Rav Nasan holds eating is not essential. Therefore, each one can fulfill his duty with one Kom Pesach. Pshita Damel. So one thing's clear. Nitzma habasa, if the meat of kodshim is tameh, v'hemurin kayamin, but you still have the fats which are tahar. Zergis adam al emurin, you can still sprinkle the blood for the emurim. Nitzma emurim, if the emurim are tameh, of Kodshim. But Habasa Chaim, and the meat is still around, Zarek Sadam al Habasa. You can definitely sprinkle the blood based on the meat. Nidma Habasa v'avdu Emurim, so the meat is Tameh, and the Emurim are lost. Now what's going to be? Can you sprinkle the blood relying on that, even though it's Tameh? Or maybe you can't sprinkle the blood. He says, look, the first case in the Mishnah, and that's the Mishnah on Daf Nun Vav, 5 things come in a state of Tumah and can't be eaten in a state of Tumah. Now, one of them is the Omer offering, right? Now, like commission mitzvah basav of the Emorinu. Now, the Omer offering is similar to a carbon which is Tameh and the Emurim are lost. Because basically, the fistful of the Omer is like the blood on the Mizbeach. So the situation of Minchas Omer, which is Tameh, the bits that are eaten of the Mincha are Tameh, there's nothing else which is going on the Mizbeach. It's like our situation, where the parts that are eaten of the carbon have become Tameh, the parts that go on the Mizbeach are not around. Nevertheless, we say, Atama, we still said Kobes, you can take a fistful of the Omer to the Mizbeach. So here as well, if the meat is Tameh and the Emurim are lost, Zayrek, you can still go ahead and sprinkle the blood on the Mizbeach. Amar Mother said you can't bring a right from our Mishnah, because Tifta, it could be that Mishnah is like Rebbe Lezer, who argues with Rebbe Yeshua about the sprinkling of the blood. Rebbe Lezer, he said, I don't care if there's nothing left, you can still sprinkle. He said, Abishain, Shirayim, there's nothing left, Yesh Kaimitz, you can still take a fistful. So it comes out, as a case of Korbanos, you should sprinkle the blood, even though the meat and the Emurim are not around with him. So the question is, what we asked, the subject was only according to Yeshua. He held to the meat of the Emurim, they still need to be around to allow you to sprinkle. We could explain the Mishnah like according to Belezer, therefore we can't answer the question that we had according to Yeshua. Now, the Pesach, we said you can bring in a state of impurity and you can eat it in a state of impurity. Now this is whether everyone's Tameh or the Kohanim are Tameh. Right? Now what about eating it where the Tzibur is Tahor but the Kohanim are Tameh? Trust the Kohanim, right? Everyone's Tahor and the Kohanim are Tameh. But B'tumas Ovdin. So if come Pesach, when the Kohanim did the Avodah, they were Tameh. Everyone else was Tahor. What's the din? Is it permitted to be eaten to Tameh people or only Tahor people? Hey Chavida, what's the case here? I mean, surely slaughtering, receiving the blood, the Kohen has to be involved in it, he has to touch it. If he's Tameh, the carbon will be Tameh. So how is the meat Tahor? He says, Shachto Isai, look, Tahor people slaughtered it, who were Bali women who had a blemish. V'zalku Isai, and the blood was sprinkled Tameim, with Kohanim were Tameh. And although the blood was sprinkled with Tumah, the carbon is still Tahor, right? They didn't actually touch the carbon, the Tameh ones. So is the heta of pushing away the Tumah, does that apply to all Chiyuvim of Korban Pesach, even where it's not needed? Maybe the heta is limited to those Chiyuvim where you need this sort of heta. So you follow. Here, Balei Mumin were the ones who shechted it. So they're Tahor. And then the sprinkling was done by Kohanim or Tameh, but they didn't touch the animal, right? So maybe you don't need to push away Tumah. Let's see. Amravila. It says with eating meat of Kodshim, which is Tameh, so in this case, look, you didn't touch the meat, Tameh, anything which is Tameh. The Kohanim or Tahor were the Balei Mumin, they dealt with the meat. Then it's eating Kodshim, which is Tahor, through people who are Tameh. And it says, Habasa, and the Tahor meat, Kal Tahor Yachabasa. Tahor people can eat it. In our case, there are Tahor people who are going to eat it. Most people are Tahor. So the first part of the pasuk forbids eating Kodshim, which is Tameh. And the second part forbids eating Kodshim Tahor through a person who is Tameh. So in our situation, we can fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach without being over on these Isurim. The Kohanim are not defiling the meat. The tzibur that are eating the Korban Pesach are Tahor. You don't need to push away these Isurim, so they're not pushed away. Despite the fact that there's an Issa Tumah which has been pushed away, that's the Issa of a Kohen who is Tameh to sprinkle the blood. So since the Issa of eating Basar B'Tumah has not been pushed away, we don't allow eating the meat for those people who are Tameh. You need to have the majority people who are Tahor. Rav Zahira, he said no. Look, if you bring a Korban Pesach state of impurity, it's eaten in impurity. So we have a cloud. When the avodah of the Pesach pushes away tumah, even one part, the Pesach is a Pesach coming in a state of impurity. And the tumah is pushed away as far as its mitzvah in every respect. But in this situation where we're not sure, the Cohen is sprinkling blood are tameh. That's it. It makes the whole thing a state of tameh. So bringing the Korban Pesach pushes away the issur of the Kohen coming into the azara b'tumah, the issur receiving the blood b'tumah, everything gets pushed away. If that's the case, K'misha b'tumah, the Pesach is like an animal coming in a state of impurity. The tumah is pushed away in every respect, and even though the meat is tahor, tameh people are allowed to eat it. V'ayda, where did Rav Zohar say this? That because the tumah is pushed away one part, right? There's Kohen doing the sprinkling or tameh. Because tumah is pushed away one part, we push away the lot. Where do we see this? From the following. He said, Baba tumah sadam. Let's say the blood of the Korban Pesach of most of the people is tameh. The meat is tahor. The kohenim are tahor. The community are tahor. Can you eat in a state of tumah? The avodah can be done through kohenim who are tahor. The meat can be eaten by a tzibur who is tahor. The only needing heter which you need is sprinkling the blood, which is tameh. And that pushes away, the sprinkling pushes away the tumah. So does the heter of pushing away the tumah of zrikas adam allow tameh people to eat from it? Or maybe the heter is limited to just the sprinkling, and it's not extended to people at tahor to eat. Maybe only tahor people can eat. So the question is how far we extend and push away the tumah. He says, hey Chavida, what's the case? On the one hand, in a case of, blood of a private korban which is tameh, you don't allow the Kohen to sprinkle the blood. And yet, blood Pesach of Roiv Tzibur, which is tameh, you can sprinkle the blood even lechatchila. Tumah Tzibur, we push away, so the Pesach is brought. So since we allow you Korban Pesach where we don't allow it within an individual, this tells me that Pesach where the blood is tameh is, for example, Kami Shabbat B'tumah. The whole Isuri Tumah get pushed away. Therefore, the meat is permitted to be eaten even through tameh people. Or you can say no. Look, if the Cohen went and sprinkled the tameh blood of an individual korban, it is acceptable. So Pesach where the blood is tameh is considered Kami Shalai Bar B'tumah. Maybe it's not really pushed away anything, because b'diavad it works. So the tumah is not pushed away for any matter, and therefore someone who's tameh won't be able to eat it. Now the only safek of Zohar where dam is tameh is maybe the kashrus of the dam tameh of a korban yachid. Maybe b'diavad is okay. Once you've sprinkled it, maybe b'diavad, it's post facto, it's okay. And therefore, we don't consider it as a korban coming in a state of tumah. Now he says, without this question, imagine like this. If the dam tameh of a private korban was only b'diavad, kosher, the Rav Zohar would agree you can eat the Korban Pesach in the state of tumah, despite the fact that you can eat it for most people who's tahor. If b'diavad is kosher, then Rav Zohar would agree you can eat it in a state of tumah, despite the fact that most people are tahor. Now Rav Zohar holds when tumah is pushed away, right, even in one matter, it's considered a Pesach coming in a state of impurity. The tumah is pushed away for every respect. And that is the source for the view of Zohar which we brought above. Yeah, as long as tumah is pushed away in one aspect, then it's pushed away for everything. Now, we bring this safek of Zohar about Pesach where the blood is tameh. Let's try and work out an answer. We learn from the following. Aaron wins the sits, and it's a kapara for tumah's kodshim. The sits is matzah. Avoid hakrevim. It's the sin of korbanos that are brought. V'loy avodim hakrevim, not the tumah of those bringing the korbanos. The sits is matzah on the korban if the blood was tameh, but not if the kohen was tameh. Hifrish, the pasuk makes the difference between krevin leyachid, krevin letzibur, between tumah korbanos of a private to a communal, right? And also between tumah of bringing a korban yachid and tumah of bringing a korban tzibur. So he says like this: hakrevin leyachid, tumah of a korbanos for an individual. Im yeshlai, if that person who's tameh has got another korban which is tahor, we tell him bring the other one. Im lav, if not, we don't allow him to sprinkle his blood of the one which is tameh. The tzitz doesn't allow you to go ahead and sprinkle the blood of a korban yachid which is tameh. So if you haven't yet sprinkled the blood, you cannot now be makriv the korban. And even if you've got nothing else. If you did go and sprinkle the blood which is tamei, hutza, the korban is accepted with the evet, because of the sitz, which is maratzah on tumas korban. And makriven leyachid, tumah of kohenim, who are bringing a private korban, the din is as follows. Ben sheyesh loi, whether the owner of the korban has a tar korban instead that he can bring. Ben she'ein loi, or he hasn't got, loi hutza, is not accepted. The sitz is not maratzah, even b'di'eved, to allow korban yachid where the owner is tamei. Now, what about the din of korban tzibur, which is tamei? Let's still talk about korban tzibur. Let's see what korban tzibur. Hakravin letzibur, korbanos which are tamei for a tzibur. Im yesh, if there is one other korban which is tar you can bring over, and let me say, I'll bring the other one. V'im lav, there's nothing else to bring. Matir, now we allow the Cohen lizrek b'tzchila to go and sprinkle the blood. Because the kach of the sitz for a communal offering, which is tamei, is greater than its kach for a private korban, which allows you to bring a korban which is tamei even lechatchila. So if it's a communal offering which got tamei, the sitz allows you to still go ahead and bring it. And what about korban tzibur where the kohen is tamei? And makriven letzibur, some of the kohenim who are bringing a korban tzibur. If there are kohenim atar, then lechatchila they should sprinkle the blood, and we don't allow kohenim tamei to sprinkle the blood. If there's no kohenim tahirim, then the tamei kohenim can sprinkle the blood. B'di'eved ben sheyeshle, whether there are tahar kohenim, ben she'eno, you don't have, all the kohenim are tamei, avav zarak, if the kohen went and sprinkled the blood, hutza, it is acceptable. Now we spoke about the din of kraven letzibur, right? If the blood of a korban tzibur, there's no other korban instead of this tamei one, you can go and sprinkle it. But the blood of a private korban, you mustn't sprinkle it, even though you've got nothing else. Pushing away tumah with a communal one allows you to push away the issur of sprinkling tamei blood. The sitz with a private korban doesn't allow that issur. So Pesach, which is coming in a state of tumah, the sprinkling of the blood treats it as if it's a state of tumah, basically. And therefore, we worked out the answer of Rav Zohar about Pesach above the tumah sadam, that you can eat it even without tumah. So he says, a Pesach which is coming in Tumah can be eaten in Tumah. So let's discuss this. I'm Rabbalasa. The Masnisa. So the Issa, the Hetzer to allow you to eat a korban Pesach with Tumah. This Mishnah says, from the beginning, when it was slaughtered, everyone was Tamei. And that's when it pushes away the Tumah. But in Baba Tahara, if you brought it in a state of purity, and then later, the people became Tamei, then I'm afraid it can't be eaten in the state of tumah. Another brisa, shachtoi b'tara. If you slaughter korban Pesach state of impurity, then everyone was tamei. Yizorek adam b'tara. You can sprinkle the blood in state of impurity. Al yechal abasa b'tumah. Don't eat the meat in the state of impurity because the tzibur became tamei later. You can't eat it. If some of the people are tahor, they should eat it. Not through the majority who are tamei. You hear this? If you went and slaughtered it when everyone was tahor, and then after that everyone becomes tamei, then they can't eat it. Yeah, it has to be that they were tamei from the beginning, right? This price is the source for the dinner of Elazar, that tumah is pushed away as far as Pesach only if it happens from the beginning of the avodah of the korban, before shchita. That's when we push it away, but not later. Rabbi Elav Shem Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Nosson, he's here, Rabbi Nosson, he said, Yaitzein bezrika, you fulfill your duty of Pesach with the sprinkling of the blood, without eating the meat. As we quoted him before. So the eating doesn't matter. Once you sprinkle the blood, they fulfill your duty. So you can sprinkle the blood even if the animal won't be eaten. And since you can fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach without eating it, he agrees that you can't eat from this Pesach because the tzibur are tamei, and tumah is not pushed away for something which is not ma'akev in the kiyum of the mitzvah. He says they fulfill that mitzvah even if they don't eat it. So don't eat it. Shachtai b'tara, if you slaughter korban Pesach state of purity, then nitma adam, then the blood was tamei, and tzibur, and the community was tamei. You hear that? Everything was fine. Then the blood became tamei, and the community became tamei. Yizarek adam b'tumah. You can sprinkle the blood and say tumah, but don't eat the meat. So sprinkling is permitted, right? But eating it is only the people who are tahor. Now Rav Lau said above, the Bryce is like the view of Rav Nosson, and we're going to bring other Messiahs now. Rav Yirmiyah b'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, he said this could be even according to the Chachamim, who argue Rav Nosson. They say you can't fulfill your duty of Pesach sprinkling without eating it. And Mekadin, you're allowed to eat the Pesach B'tumah because it's essential. But there were guys that don't eat it in a state of impurity. We don't want people to think you've done something wrong, right? People shouldn't say, Ra'inu Pesach B'Tahara, we saw carbon coming in a state of purity, V'nachal, and B'tumah was eaten in a state of impurity. And they'll allow you to eat Pesach even where the Tumah happened after the sprinkling, which definitely you would not be able to eat the carbon Pesach then. But it says no, because the Pesach wasn't bar b'tumah, yeah? If it became tamei later, you definitely can't eat it. It's only if it was tamei from the beginning. Therefore, there were guys that even if it happened to tumah before sprinkling, you're not allowed to eat it. Mayat, if that's the case, right? The eating the meat is also because of Masechet. So then, don't even sprinkle the blood. People shouldn't say, Re'inu Pesach Shabbat B'Tara. We saw Pesach coming in a state of purity. But Nizra B'Tumah, and sprinkled in a state of impurity. I mean, if we forbid you to eat meat because of Masechet, we should forbid you to sprinkle the blood B'Tumah because of Masechet. People shouldn't think, I can sprinkle the blood for every Pesach B'Tumah, even where the Kohen are tahor. Since the Chachamim were not goyzer on sprinkling of this blood, in the Sabbath they were not goyzer on eating the meat. So what do you see? The is of eating meat B'Tumah is not because of Masechet. You have to say that this is Bryce's view of Nosson, who holds the eating the meat is not ma'akev in the mitzvah of Pesach. Now we're going to still discuss Rav Nosson. Moeder Rav Nosson agrees, b'cholev v'zakin. You imagine you have an elderly person who's on the group of this Korban Pesach, right? And the Korban's puzzle. If that's who there is, there's no one else, there's only elderly people, right? And no one's going to eat tashir, kazais. Now, Rav Nosson holds eating is not essential. But he agrees the people who are in the group have to be fitting to eat. So even though Rav Nosson allows the Korban Pesach where the boss is tamei, he passes the Korban Pesach where the only people are sick people or elderly people. Now, even though Rav Nosson allows the Pesach where the meat is tamei, Moed Rav Nosson, he agrees, he v'chabura, the group who are eating Korban Pesach, shenitz ma'oben shela, if the Cohen doing the work of the group, if he's tamei, Shehen Nidchen Pesach Sheni, then they have to be pushed over to next month. The Pesach with Avodah was done through a Cohen who's Tameh is possible. And the people in this group do not fulfill their duty with it, and they have to keep another one next month. And Moeder of Nosson agrees, imagine you have a group with the Korban Pesach, they find a wart on the skin of the animal after you sprinkle the blood. Shehen Nidchen Pesach Sheni. The Korban's possible, and they all push for next month. He agrees the Pesach's possible. The time when you slaughtered it, they had this wart. We didn't know about it. So it was never a kosher carbon, and therefore the sprinkling blood is not appeased. Now, since the Gemara mentions a wart, which is on the skin of a Pesach, and it puzzles the Pesach, we bring a brisa which is connected. Imagine, you've got 5 groups, and all their skins got mixed up. They skin the skins off the animals now, and you find 5 skins, and one of the skins has a wart. And we don't know which one had the wart. All of them have to be burnt. But they don't have to do another korban. 4 out of the 5 have fulfilled their duty. They keep Pesach Rishon. Their korban was fine. So therefore, each one of the 4 groups will, if they're going to offer up a Pesach Sheni, it's not going to help. The Pesach Korban Chayva, it can't be an Adava, and could be they fulfill their duty. The animal will say Chulin. So because of the doubt, they can't bring Pesach Sheni. Because they might not be obligated in Pesach Sheni. They're bringing Chulin into the Azara. Now back to the Brisa, which we said, if you shech the Korban Pesach B'Tara, and then the community become Tameh, you sprinkle the blood, but you can't eat the meat. So maybe the Bnei Yeshiva wanted to say to Rav Nosson, this must be like Rav Nosson. You fulfill your duty with sprinkling, even if you can't eat the meat. And that's why it says, if the people are Tameh after Shechita, the blood is sprinkled, but it can't be eaten. But then afterwards, they change their mind. Because of what we said. Even Rav Nosson agrees, the people connected with this group have to be fitting to eat the meat. And if they can't eat it, it's possible. The Bryce is talking about a case where the people in the group are Tameh, they're not fitting to eat the korban. According to Rav Nosson, Tumah is not pushed away for eating Korban Pesach because you can manage without eating it. If that's the case, Minadin, a Pesach should be possible and the blood should be also to do any sprinkling. Right? The Brisa which says you can sprinkle the blood must argue on Rav Nosson and holds Tumah is pushed away for eating in Korban Pesach, and therefore the Pesach is kosher and the blood can be sprinkled. But then because of this question, the one says, well, Tifta, it could be that this Brisa is talking about a case, the Divrei HaKol. Could be Rav Nosson and the Chachamim, but it's talking about a case, Tameh, a community are Tameh, but Safek Kever to home. The situation where Rav Nosson and Chachamim agree. If you have this sort of Tumah, which is like a rabbinical Tumah, a Safek of dead in the depths on the ground and so on, and maybe a body has been threshed around and rattled around over there. It's a rabbinical Tumah. And maybe, in this case, if they're Tumah with this sort of Tumah, they're also to eat Korban Pesach. So it's sort of a Rabbanan din, really. Okay. Now we had a machlekes Rav Lezer and Rishua. Can you sprinkle the blood when the meat or the emurim are apostle or lost? According to Rishua, you can't sprinkle the blood unless one of them is here and is kosher. Our Mishnah said like him, it says if the meat is tameh or the chaylev remains sahar, sprinkle the blood. Sounds like if the chaylev is also tameh, you can't sprinkle the blood, the carbon's possible. Now we bring Rav Yeshua himself, who brings the source to on the pasuk. Rav Yechon Mishmah, Shem Rav Yeshua Kasra Chadaim. One pasuk says, Ach b'chol shor, or b'chol kesef, or b'chol eis. The firstborn, you can't redeem it, right? It's holy. The blood sprinkled on mizbeach. The meat will be for you. So we bring the sprinkling of the blood of the Korban Pesach. So we bring the chaylev and eating the meat, and we're comparing them. So the blood of the b'chol is sprinkled only if the chaylev and the meat are kosher. The kasef Chadaim. And therefore, the pasuk comes along with Tumah Kabbalah. It says, "V'zarak hakodesh adam." The Cohen sprinkles the blood on mizbeach Hashem Pesach Avoid. V'hikta hachaylev l'reach nechach l'Hashem. It mentions the chaylev. It doesn't mention the meat. It's enough the chaylev is around to allow you to do the sprinkling. And we said, really, you don't need that the meat is still around. So it's saying you don't really need that the chaylev is around. You can do the sprinkling for the blood, providing you have either meat to eat, or fats to offer up. Now we're talking about Rabbi Yeshua's view that behema of a carbon, which let's say one of its parts is missing. One brings a Mishnah, machlokes Rav Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua about mincha where one of its parts got missing. Let's see. We've learnt in Menachos nitmu shiraha. If you got the flour offering and the remains, the what's left of it is all tameh, and this got burnt, after it got lost. Kemidas Rabbi Lezer, according to the view of Rabbi Lezer, with an animal, he allows you to sprinkle the blood, even though the meat and the chaylev are both gone. Kashera, the flour offering, is kosher. Kemidas Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yeshua, who allows you sprinkling only if the meat is here or the fat is here, then I'm afraid with the mincha is pasula, it is possible. Okay, now the Gemara brings a second part that's not completely connected with what we're dealing with. Shalai be klishos. Now a mincha, which is not, if the fistful of a flour offering is not put in a klishos, is possible. But Yishmael machshe, Yishmael allowed it. Okay. Hekte kumsa palmayim. If you take a fistful of on the mizbeach twice, you sort of divided your fistful into two, and you put them on the mizbeach in two halves. Keshera, it's okay. Adated Rabbi Lezer, according to Rabbi Lezer, with karbonos, the sprinkling of the blood is essential with the carbon. In ein dam, ein basa. If you can't sprinkle the blood, right, let's say it got lost, then I'm afraid you can't eat the meat. Av ein basa yesh dam. And even if the meat is pasul or lost, the carbon is not pasul. You can still sprinkle the blood. And same thing with a mincha as well. The fistful of a mincha is like the dam of the carbon, and the leftovers are like the flesh. And putting the fistful is ma'akev in the kashrus of a flour offering. If ein kometz, ein shirayim. If you can't offer the fistful, let's say it got lost, then the remainder is also to be eaten. Av b'shein shirayim yesh kometz. And even if the shirayim is pasul, right, the mincha is not pasul. You're allowed to do the fistful on the mizbeach. And that's what the Mishnah says, Kemidas Rabbi Lezer is kosher. That means according to the view of Rabbi Lezer, you're allowed to sprinkle the blood, because even if there's no meat and no fat, the mincha is kosher, right? Even if there's no shirayim. According to Rabbi Yeshua's view, the sprinkling of the blood is essential. If ein dam, ein basar. If the carbon is pasul, the meat you can't eat. Imein basa, ein dam. If the meat is pasul or lost, the blood, you mustn't sprinkle it. It's all pasul. And also a flour offering, for let's say compared to a common behema, the fistful is ma'akev. Imein kometz, if you can't do the fistful, ein shiraim, you can't have the leftovers. Right? Imein shiraim, ein kometz. If there's no leftovers, you can't have the fistful either. So the fistful of the mincha you can't do it, the mincha is pasul. And that's what the Mishnah said, like Rabbi Lezer with is pasul. That means according to the view of Yeshua, pasul of a carbon behema. Okay. Now we're going to talk about what we mentioned. We said the Omer offering and the chalas lechem upon him, they can come in a state of impurity, but they can't be eaten b'tumah. So we bring the last part of this discussion. Amrabban, Tifta, we could fit in the case. Rabbi Lezer, he said, there's no leftovers, you can still do the fistful. So why a fistful of the Omer, the levina of the lechem upon him, are put on the mizbeach b'tumah, even though the leftovers of the flour offering, or the leftovers of the lechem upon him, can't be eaten b'tumah. Now, according to Bishua, you can't do them b'tumah because the shirayim are also to eat. Now, our Mishnah, which is a continuation of the previous Mishnah, is not fitting in, according to Rabbi Lezer, it's fitting in like the view of Rabbi Yeshua, right? That we're saying what? It's not fitting according to Yeshua. The shirayim are also to eat, so you can't bring it. And our Mishnah seems to fit in with that. So our Rabbi Yezribun, Rabbi Yechon Teren Amrin, the both said, Moed B'Shua agrees, look, if there's no leftovers, you shouldn't really do the kometz, right? But if you did, Shumava V'Zarik Sadam, let's say a carbon, you went and sprinkled the blood, when the meat was tameh, Shehulsa is acceptable. He says the tzitz is maratze on foods. Min HaTorah, the ritz of the tzitz helps you to allow sprinkling the blood if the meat is tameh. Or he allows you to do a fistful if the leftovers of the mincha are tameh. Right? That which he says in Menachos, if the leftovers are tameh, the mincha is pasul, that's gezeres chachamim. Don't sprinkle the blood. Don't do the fistful. But if you went against them and you did sprinkle the blood, you did do the fistful, the carbon is accepted min HaTorah. But it's gezeres chachamim was said only for a private carbon, not a tibul. So you're allowed l'chatzchila to bring a carbon tibul where the meat is tameh, because the tzitz is meratzeh to allow the sprinkling of the blood despite the fact that the meat is tameh. And the same thing is mutter l'chatzchila to bring a mincha of a tibul where everything is tameh, because the tzitz is meratzeh to allow you to bring the ketores, to do the fistful despite the fact that the leftovers are tameh. And so you see the words of the Mishnah that a fistful of Minchas HaOmer and the Levine of Lechem upon can be brought in a state of Tumah, even according to Yeshua, who holds that tzitz is meratzeh to allow you lechatchila, the sprinkling blood of a common tzibur, even though the meat is tameh. So we're saying, but the ebed is still acceptable. Yeah, that's what we're saying, even according to Yeshua. So therefore, if things are tameh and the tzitz is meratzeh, especially a communal carbon, it's still be the ebed acceptable. Okay. You want to carry on? No? We'll stop here today then, yeah? Okay.